You're not stuck because you lack time. You're stuck because you keep choosing later. Have you ever caught yourself saying things like, I'll start next week, or I just need more time, or when the timing's right? We all have. It feels innocent, hopeful even. But the truth is, those words are silent thieves. They steal from you, not with noise or drama, but with stillness. They steal your time, your energy, your potential, one quiet second at a time. No alarm sounds when you're drifting off course. Life doesn't send a warning before it slips past you. It just does. And then one day you look up and wonder how you ended up so far from where you thought you'd be. Not because you took the wrong turn, but because you stood still, promising yourself you'd move later. The Stoics had a way of confronting that brutal honesty head on. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Every second you choose mediocrity is a second that's gone, and it's not coming back." That line isn't poetic, it's a wake-up call. It reminds us that every second we let pass without intention is not neutral. It's a choice, a quiet surrender. A moment we'll never reclaim. And let's be honest, most of us aren't stuck because of some massive obstacle. We're stuck in the smallest way possible, in the comfort of doing nothing, in the ease of delaying, in the familiar rhythm of not yet. But the problem with not yet is that it becomes a habit, and habits become lives. I know this because I've lived it. There was a time I thought I was planning, reflecting, getting ready. But in truth, I was stalling. I confused thinking with progress. I thought awareness was enough. But reflection without action is just dressed up procrastination. You don't need more time. You don't need more information. What you need, what we all need, is courage. The courage to begin before you feel ready. The courage to move before the road feels clear. And maybe that's why you're here right now. Something inside you, quiet but persistent, knows you've waited long enough. You're not here for another motivational slogan or flashy moment of hype. You're here because you want something real. You're tired of existing on autopilot. You want to feel alive again. And that feeling doesn't come from more talking. It comes from doing. This journey we're about to take together isn't about perfection. It's not about becoming someone new overnight. It's about growing, bit by bit, breath by breath, every second of your life. It's about reclaiming your agency in the smallest, most powerful ways. One choice, one change, one moment of clarity that turns into momentum. You don't have to overhaul your entire life today, but you do have to stop pretending that someday is a real day. It isn't. Someday is where potential goes to die. Now is where transformation begins. Maybe you're afraid to start because you think it's too late, or because you've failed before, or because no one else seems to notice your effort. But remember what Marcus Aurelius also wrote. Don't waste what's left of your life wondering how to live it. Just live. That's the challenge and the invitation. You see, this moment right here is not just another minute on the clock. It's a decision point. You can choose to keep scrolling, keep waiting, keep repeating the cycle, or you can choose to stop, to breathe, to do the next right thing, no matter how small, because that's where change really lives. Not in the big leaps, but in the brave seconds. The seconds where you choose progress over pause. The seconds where you say, this is hard, but I'm doing it anyway. This video isn't going to hand you comfort. It won't flatter your excuses or tell you what you want to hear. It's here to push you, to challenge you, to help you stop surviving and start living with purpose, with clarity, with presence. So if something inside you feels uncomfortable right now, good. That means you're waking up. That means you're paying attention. And that means you're ready. You don't have to know exactly where this road leads. You just have to take the first step. You already know what's waiting if you stay still. Let's find out what happens when you move. Because every second you spend choosing action over avoidance, intention over excuse, truth over comfort, is a second you grow. And it all begins now. Lesson 1, don't believe everything you think. What if the biggest enemy you've been battling isn't the world, your past, or even your circumstances, but your own thoughts? Most people go through life without realizing this. The voice in your head isn't always telling the truth. In fact, it rarely is. It just repeats what it's heard, what you've been told, what you've feared, what you've internalized. And after hearing the same thing for so long, you stop questioning it. You start believing it. There's a woman I once met named Laura. She's an interior designer now, award-winning in fact. But for years, she carried a belief that nearly ruined her potential. That belief? I'm not creative enough. It wasn't something she shouted aloud. It was quieter than that. It whispered to her when she hesitated to submit her work. It showed up when she was praised but deflected it. It echoed inside whenever she saw someone else succeed and thought, they're just naturally better than me. But here's what changed. One day, Laura signed up for a weekend creative workshop, not because she believed in herself, but because a friend insisted. And during that weekend, something clicked. Not only did her ideas flow effortlessly, but by the end of the workshop, her project was chosen for a national showcase. She didn't suddenly become creative overnight. What changed was her belief. The voice in her head didn't just lose power, it was exposed. And that's the thing. We often confuse thoughts with facts, but they're not the same. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, it's not things that disturb us, but our opinion about them. In other words, your suffering rarely comes from what's actually happening. It comes from what you tell yourself about it. Think about that. How many opportunities have you missed because your mind whispered, you're not ready? How many conversations have you avoided because you thought they won't listen anyway? How many dreams have you shelved because you believed, I'm not that kind of person? The human brain is incredible, but it's not always helpful. It's wired to detect danger, preserve energy, avoid discomfort, which means it will come up with all kinds of reasons for you not to act, not to speak up, not to grow. Not because you're incapable, but because your mind has confused discomfort with danger. And if you don't challenge those thoughts, you start obeying them like laws. I'm too old. I'm too late. I've failed too many times. I don't have what it takes. But here's a question worth asking. If a friend told you those things about themselves, would you agree? Would you nod and say, you're right, don't even try? Of course not. You'd remind them of their strengths. You'd remind them that thoughts aren't always facts. So why not offer yourself the same grace? Psychologists have a term for this, cognitive distancing. One simple version of it is speaking to yourself in the third person. So instead of thinking, I'm overwhelmed, you ask, why is Sarah feeling overwhelmed right now? It sounds silly, but it works because it puts space between the thought and the person, between the emotion and the identity. You're not your thoughts, you're the observer of them, and that's where your power lies. Laura didn't become more creative in one weekend. She simply got enough distance from her self-doubt to take a small risk. That risk led to feedback. That feedback built confidence. and that confidence allowed her to try again. It's a loop. But it starts with one thing: refusing to treat your thoughts like truth. Now, this doesn't mean ignoring your mind completely. It means evaluating it, interrogating it, asking, is this helpful? Is this even real? Who gave me this belief in the first place? Most of the time, you'll find those thoughts aren't even yours. They're echoes from childhood, from rejection, from failure, from someone who told you something once and you never let it go. But you can let it go now. Not all at once, not perfectly, but moment by moment, thought by thought. By realizing I'm having a negative thought is not the same as I am a negative person. One leaves you stuck, the other creates space to grow. The Stoics understood this better than most. They knew the battlefield is often inside us, not out there in the world, but in our judgment of it, in the meaning we assign to things. And they trained themselves to separate what happens from what they believe about it. So here's your reminder: you are not the voice in your head. You are the one listening to it. And that means at any moment you can choose to believe something different. You can write a new story, a stronger one, a clearer one that gives you your power back. Because the truth is, your potential is not determined by what you think. It's determined by what you do, even when your thoughts tell you otherwise. And the moment you stop believing every doubt, every fear, every false limitation, is the moment you finally begin to grow. Lesson 2. Restructure your environment. Have you ever tried to build a new habit? Maybe eating healthier, waking up earlier, reading more, only to fall back into the same old routine? You had the willpower, you had the intention, you even had a plan, but some invisible force kept pulling you back to square one. Most people blame themselves when that happens. They say things like, I just don't have the discipline, or I must not want it badly enough. But often the issue isn't internal, it's environmental. You're not failing because you're weak. You're failing because you're trying to grow in the soil that doesn't support your growth. Let me tell you about Jake. He's in his early 30s, works in finance, and has been trying for years to get his health on track. Every Monday, he'd show up at the office with a packed lunch, determined to avoid the greasy takeout that had become his daily habit. And every day around noon, his coworkers would swing by his desk and say, "We're heading out for burgers. You coming?" At first, Jake resisted, but after the 4th or 5th time, he gave in. One burger won't hurt, he told himself. And the next day it was fries. The day after that, pizza. Within a week, he was back to where he started, discouraged and blaming himself for not being strong enough. But was that really the problem? Eventually, Jake switched jobs, not because of the food, but for a new opportunity. What he didn't expect was that in his new office, the culture was completely different. His coworkers brought their own lunches, shared healthy recipes, and walked together during breaks. Within a month, Jake was eating clean, walking 3 miles a day, and had never felt better. Same person, same goals, completely different outcome. Why? Because his environment changed. Seneca once said, "Avoid the company of those who do not better you." That advice might sound harsh at first, but it's deeply wise. He wasn't talking about isolating yourself or looking down on others. He was reminding us of a simple truth. The people around you are not neutral. They're either lifting you up or pulling you down, helping you grow or keeping you stuck, sometimes without even realizing it. It's not just people either. Your environment is everything you expose yourself to, what you see, what you hear, what you scroll through. The voices you let in become the thoughts you repeat. The behaviors you see become the habits you form. You might think your phone habits are harmless, but if your feed is filled with negativity, drama, or endless distractions, it's shaping you in ways you don't even notice. You can't expect to stay inspired if you're surrounded by discouragement. You can't expect to stay focused if you're constantly interrupted. And you can't expect to believe in your potential if every conversation you have chips away at your confidence. So here's the hard truth. If you want to change your life, you have to start by changing your surroundings. It doesn't mean you have to cut people off or move across the country, but it does mean you need to become intentional. Ask yourself, who do I spend the most time with each week? Do they support my growth or resist it? Do they remind me of who I want to be or who I used to be? Then take inventory of your inputs. What podcasts do you listen to? What books are on your nightstand? What does your workspace look like? Is it a place that energizes you or drains you? It might sound small, but even moving your phone to another room while you sleep can change your morning mindset. Even switching your lunch spot can shift your energy. Even choosing silence over gossip can transform your focus. Change doesn't always start with a massive breakthrough. Sometimes it begins with a subtle shift in your surroundings, one that makes the next right choice just a little bit easier. When Jake found himself in a new environment, it didn't make him a different person. It simply gave the better version of him a fighting chance. And that's what your environment should do. Create fewer temptations, fewer distractions, and more reminders of who you're trying to become. Seneca understood that your soul is shaped by imitation, that you become like what surrounds you. And if that's true, then the question isn't just, who are you? It's also, what are you standing in the middle of? So take a moment and look around, not just with your eyes, but with intention. Are you growing in the right soil, or are you trying to bloom in concrete? Because the truth is, you're not a failure. You're a seed. And maybe, just maybe, all you've needed is a better place to grow. Lesson 3. Keep hammering the stone. Sometimes growth looks like nothing. It looks like failure, silence, stillness. You keep showing up. You keep doing the work. And yet, nothing moves. No applause, no result, no breakthrough. Just the same wall in front of you, day after day. And that's the moment when most people stop. Not because they were lazy, but because they confuse the absence of results with the absence of progress. But what if the progress is happening quietly, underneath the surface? Let me tell you about Evelyn. She was 45 when she picked up a violin for the first time. Not as a joke, not as a casual hobby, but because she'd always dreamed of learning it. Her friends smiled politely. Her brother made a comment about midlife crises. Even her daughter gently asked, "Why now?" But Evelyn had this quiet determination in her. She didn't want to go another year wondering what it would feel like to hold a bow and create something beautiful. So she signed up for weekly lessons. She practiced 30 minutes a day. And for months, all she produced were squeaks and sour notes. Her dog would leave the room. Her husband would wear headphones, and still she kept going. 9 months later, Evelyn played Canon in D at her daughter's wedding. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers, and the tears in her daughter's eyes said more than a standing ovation ever could. You see, most people want change to feel dramatic, fast, obvious, but real change, deep change, often feels like hitting a giant stone with a small hammer. You strike it and nothing happens. You strike it again, still nothing, and again, Day after day, you show up. You put in the effort. You wonder if anything's working. And then one day, a crack appears. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't waste what's left of your life wondering how to live it. Just live." And that's what Evelyn did. She didn't wait until she was ready. She didn't wait for permission. She started even if the progress was invisible at first. That's what most people don't understand. It's not the 1,000th hit that breaks the stone. It's the 999 that came before it. When you don't see immediate results, it's tempting to quit. You think the gym isn't working, the meditation isn't working, the business isn't growing. But the truth is it's working in ways you can't yet measure. You're building consistency. You're teaching your nervous system that you can show up even when it's hard. You're reinforcing a message to yourself. I am someone who doesn't give up. And that alone is powerful. The world is full of people who gave up too soon, people who stopped one strike before the crack appeared. And sometimes that strike wasn't even hard. It was just one more quiet, ordinary repetition. So ask yourself, what if the thing you're doing today is part of that silent buildup? What if the meal you cooked, the email you sent, the walk you took, all of it is forming a rhythm that eventually shakes the ground beneath you? We often think success is about epic actions, but more often it's about faithful repetitions. It's about showing up for yourself when no one's watching, about choosing your values even when the outcome is unclear. There's something noble in that kind of perseverance. It's not glamorous. No one's filming it for social media, but that's what makes it real. That's what makes it yours. When Evelyn picked up the violin, she wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't chasing perfection. She was choosing to live, one note at a time, one mistake at a time, one breath at a time, and that's why she made it to the moment that mattered most. So here's my challenge to you. What's your stone? What's the thing you keep striking even when it doesn't seem to change? And more importantly, can you stay with it long enough to see the crack? Because the moment you stop asking, is this working? And start saying, this is who I am, everything shifts. Progress isn't always obvious. Growth isn't always loud. But every small action, every quiet repetition is shaping something within you. Something strong, something unbreakable. So keep hammering the stone, one swing at a time, one day at a time. Not because it's easy, not because you're guaranteed a result, but because every strike is a decision. To live with intention, to grow despite resistance, to keep going even when no one's clapping. And that is how you build something that lasts. Lesson 4. Comparison is the silent killer of progress. It happens quietly. You open your phone, start scrolling, and suddenly you see them. The influencers, the entrepreneurs, the artists, the travelers. Everyone seems to be doing more, earning more, living louder. They're hitting milestones while you're just trying to get through the week. And before you know it, your chest tightens. That small voice whispers, you're behind. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It slips in through the cracks. Comparison. And it doesn't just steal your joy. It kills your progress. Let me tell you about Dylan. He works in marketing and had always been passionate about storytelling. For years, he was the go-to guy in his department for creative ideas. But at some point, he started following more creators online. YouTubers, brand strategists, growth hackers. At first, it was inspiring. He wanted to learn from the best, but slowly something shifted. The more he watched, the more inadequate he felt. He wasn't launching a new course every month. He wasn't getting speaking gigs. He didn't have the perfectly curated home office or thousands of followers reposting his insights. Every time he sat down to write, that voice came up. What's the point? You'll never catch up to them. And so he stopped. He stopped sharing ideas, stopped experimenting, stopped creating. The person who once loved the process suddenly couldn't even open his laptop without shame. That's what comparison does. It doesn't just make you feel small, it convinces you that you're not even worth starting. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, said, "True happiness comes from self-sufficiency." And he wasn't talking about living off the grid. He meant that peace comes from within, not from how you stack up against someone else's journey, but from how true you are to your own. Dylan eventually realized something needed to change. Not the algorithm, not the content, not even his job. What needed to change was the direction of his focus. So he made a simple shift. For 1 month, he unfollowed every influencer he used to compare himself to and started tracking his own daily wins instead. They were small, writing 1 page, posting 1 idea, giving feedback to a colleague. But for the first time in months, he started to feel alive again. Not because he was suddenly the best, but because he was finally reconnecting with what he loved. And that's the invitation here. Not to blindfold yourself to the world, but to come home to your own path. Because here's the truth, what you see online, or even in your social circle, is just a highlight reel. You don't see their doubt. You don't see the mornings they woke up insecure. You don't see the failures they buried before the post went viral. But you're comparing their peak to your process, their polished surface to your unfinished draft. It's not a fair fight, and you lose every time. So instead, ask yourself, what did I do this week that I'm proud of? What progress have I made in the last year? What challenge did I push through that no one clapped for, but I did it anyway? That's where the real growth lives, in the unglamorous, in the consistent, in the moments no one else sees. You're not here to become someone else. You're here to become more fully yourself. And that requires tuning in, not scrolling out. One powerful tool I've used is a personal progress journal. At the end of each week, I write down 3 small things I move forward, no matter how tiny. Some weeks it's didn't skip the gym. Other weeks it's sent the scary email. Over time, those moments build confidence, not because they're flashy, but because they're mine. And maybe that's the most important part. Ownership. When you stop measuring your worth by someone else's ruler, you reclaim your power. You realize that your life isn't a competition, it's a craft, and you get to shape it step by step, decision by decision. So the next time you feel small because of what someone else is doing, take a deep breath. Put down your phone. Look at your own feet. Look at how far they've carried you, and then ask, am I a little better today than I was yesterday? If the answer is yes, you're not behind. You're building. And no one, not even the loudest voices online, can take that away from you. You are not meant to be a copy. You are a one of one. And your path, though quieter, is no less worthy of respect. So walk it, with your head up, with your eyes forward, and with the knowledge that comparison isn't truth, it's distraction. And you got better things to focus on. Lesson 5, don't wait for motivation, obey the plan. There's a myth that's been quietly ruining dreams for years. A myth that says, you'll start when you feel ready, or just wait for the motivation to kick in. And it sounds reasonable, doesn't it? Who wants to do something they're not in the mood for? But here's the hard truth. the mood rarely shows up. And when it doesn't stay long. We live in a culture obsessed with inspiration, with hype, with those rare flashes of energy when everything feels possible. But the truth is, if you only act when you feel inspired, you'll be stuck for a long, long time. Because life doesn't reward those who wait for the perfect emotional climate. Life rewards those who show up, rain or shine. Rachel understood this. She had always wanted to learn French. She dreamed of traveling to Paris, sipping espresso on the Rue Claire, and holding her own in a real conversation. But for years, she'd start and stop. She'd download an app, take a few lessons, then forget about it. And every time she told herself, I just need to be more motivated. But one day, something shifted. She stopped chasing the feeling and started building the system. Rachel created a plan, 20 minutes of French practice every morning right after making coffee. No debate, no delay, whether she felt like it or not. And here's the magic part. 6 months later, she was holding full conversations with clients from Paris, confidently, naturally, fluently. Not because she had a talent for language, not because she was unusually disciplined, but because she showed up when it was time to show up. Marcus Aurelius said it best, if you let your mood decide for you, you become its slave. Read that again. If you only act when you feel like it, your emotions are in charge, and you've handed over the steering wheel of your life. Let me ask you something. How many times have you set the alarm early, planning to exercise, journal, or start a project, only to hit snooze and say, maybe tomorrow? And how often has that tomorrow ever arrived? It's not because you're lazy, it's because your brain is wired for comfort. It will always vote for what feels good now, even if it costs you later. That's why obeying the plan, not your mood, is one of the most powerful habits you can build. There's something liberating about structure. When you have a system, you remove the daily negotiation. You don't ask, do I feel like it? You simply do it, like brushing your teeth. You don't wait for inspiration to strike before doing that, right? Think about any master, musicians, athletes, writers. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on rhythm, on muscle memory, on discipline. And over time, that discipline becomes their identity. So how do you build this into your own life? First, make the plan painfully simple, not overwhelming, not ambitious, just clear. Like, write for 10 minutes after breakfast, or read 1 page before bed. Small, repeatable, predictable. Second, anchor your habit to something you already do. Rachel paired French practice with her morning coffee. That ritual made it automatic. You can do the same with a walk after lunch, 5 minutes of stretching before your shower, or journaling after brushing your teeth. And third, track it, not for guilt, but for visibility. Seeing your effort day after day gives you proof, not that you're perfect, but that you're consistent. And consistency over time builds confidence. Now here's a question to sit with. What would happen if you stopped waiting to feel like it and just followed your plan? What would your life look like 30 days from now, 6 months from now? You don't need a motivational speech, you need a map. And once you draw it, your job is simple. Follow it, even when it's boring. Especially when it's boring, because that's where real transformation happens. And if you slip, that's okay. Don't restart the whole thing, just return to the next step on the plan. Like a train that makes a stop and keeps going. In a world that tells you to chase excitement, You'll stand out by choosing quiet consistency. The people who create meaningful change, whether in their health, their craft, or their relationships, aren't always the most talented or passionate. They're just the ones who didn't quit. The ones who followed the plan when it wasn't easy or exciting or Instagram worthy. Because eventually the results come. And they don't show up in fireworks. They show up in fluency, in mastery, in the quiet confidence of knowing I did what I said I would do. So today, make the choice, not to feel inspired, but to obey the plan, not to wait for a perfect moment, but to create progress one decision at a time. That's what builds a life you're proud to wake up in. Lesson 6. Repetition isn't boring. It's freedom. We live in a world addicted to novelty, new goals, new gadgets, new hacks. Everyone's looking for the shortcut, the next big breakthrough, the thing that will finally change everything. And yet, when you really study success, true mastery, it doesn't look like fireworks. It looks like repetition, quiet, unremarkable, daily. Let me tell you about Tommy. He's a chef, not a celebrity, not a TV star, just a quiet man in his 40s who runs a modest but beloved neighborhood bistro. If you ever talk to him about cooking, he won't tell you about his favorite recipes. He'll tell you about his favorite repetition. For 9 straight months, Tommy cooked the same dish, grilled rosemary chicken, same marinade, same grill, same routine, 300 times. Why? Because he believed that if he could perfect this one dish, if he could understand every detail of timing, texture, and taste, he could apply that level of precision to everything else. He didn't call it obsession, he called it moving meditation, a kind of discipline through movement, through mastery. While everyone else chased complexity, he pursued excellence in simplicity. And that's what people don't understand. Repetition isn't a prison, it's freedom. Jocko Willink once said, "Discipline is freedom." And it's true, because once you commit to doing something repeatedly, whether it's a dish, a workout, a daily habit, you stop wasting energy on decision fatigue. You stop negotiating with your excuses. You become free to focus, to go deep, to discover nuance you never would have noticed if you were constantly jumping to the next thing. Think about musicians. The greats don't master their craft by playing a song once. They run scales for hours. Dancers rehearse the same moves again and again until it becomes second nature. Writers rework a single paragraph dozens of times before it feels true. But in everyday life, we resist repetition. We say, "This is boring. I already did this yesterday." But what if that's the point? What if boredom is the gate you pass through before something becomes beautiful? There's a moment somewhere past the 100th rep where your brain stops resisting and starts refining, where your movements become intentional, where you start to feel, not just perform what you're doing. That's what Tommy found. He said that around the 200th time he grilled that same chicken, he noticed something subtle, how the sound of the meat hitting the hot pan changed with the humidity in the room, how the smell shifted slightly when he used different batches of rosemary. He wasn't just cooking anymore. He was listening, observing, learning. And that's where the transformation happens. Not in the leap, but in the layering. Not in changing course every few days, but in staying long enough for the work to shape you. We've been taught to associate repetition with dullness, with being stuck, but repetition, when done intentionally, creates rhythm, it creates momentum. It becomes a kind of structure that holds you steady when your emotions waver. Because let's face it, some days you're not going to feel like doing the thing, whether it's training, learning, showing up for your family, or sticking to your craft. But when the action has been repeated enough, it becomes part of you. It's not about whether you feel like it, it's who you are. There's peace in that, and there's power in it too. So the next time you feel tempted to quit just because it's not exciting anymore, ask yourself, am I bored or am I on the edge of a breakthrough? Am I repeating the same thing or am I layering precision? Because that's what Stoicism teaches us. That fulfillment doesn't come from stimulation. It comes from presence, from showing up fully for what's in front of you. And when you do that over and over again, you don't just get better at the task, you get better at life. Here's a reflection to carry with you. What's one thing in your life you've been avoiding simply because it feels repetitive? And what would happen if you chose to embrace it instead? What if the discipline you've been resisting is the very thing that could set you free? Maybe you're not failing. Maybe you're just in the early reps. And if that's the case, keep going. Keep showing up. Keep hammering the same stone. Because repetition isn't what holds you back. It's what makes you unbreakable. Lesson 7. Learn to fail with purpose. Most people treat failure like it's the end of the road, like it's proof they weren't good enough, smart enough, or just didn't have what it takes. But what if failure is not a sign you should stop, but a signal you're getting closer? Let me tell you a story about Brandon. He wasn't some tech prodigy or Silicon Valley wonder kid. He was a former EMT from Cincinnati who had an idea. After watching too many people die from delayed emergency care, he wanted to build a simple app that could alert nearby CPR-trained volunteers during cardiac arrests. It wasn't flashy, but it could save lives. So he pitched it once, twice, 10 times, 14 times to be exact. And every time the answer was the same: not scalable, not profitable, too risky. Brandon could have stopped there, and most people would have, but he didn't, because he wasn't chasing applause. He was chasing purpose. On the 15th pitch, he finally got a yes. One investor, small check, just enough to build a prototype. Today, that app is installed in over 600 hospitals across the US and has helped save thousands of lives. Brandon failed 14 times, and yet he didn't really fail. He refined, he recalibrated, he rewrote the plan, but never the mission. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the obstacle is not something outside the journey. It is the journey. Each rejection Brandon faced wasn't a wall, it was a map. If you know how to read your failures, they become guidance, not defeat. So many of us are terrified of looking foolish, of hearing no, of putting in work and not seeing results. But here's the truth no one tells you. If you're not failing, you're probably not aiming high enough. You're probably playing it safe, staying in the shallow end where nothing hurts, but nothing grows either. Failure doesn't mean you're off track. Sometimes it means you've just started. Think about a toddler learning to walk. They fall constantly. And yet no one says, maybe walking just isn't for you. We understand intuitively that falling is part of the process. So why, as adults, do we treat our failures like final verdicts instead of stepping stones? I've learned that real progress is almost always invisible at first, especially when you're doing something meaningful. It's like planting seeds. The soil looks the same for weeks, no applause, no fireworks, just quiet work day after day. Until one day, life breaks through, but if you quit too early, you never get to see what could have been. That's why learning how to fail with purpose is a skill. It means asking yourself not, why did this happen to me? But, what is this trying to teach me? It means turning your pain into pattern recognition, turning your stumbles into strategy. Sometimes the first draft of your dream is too rough. It needs sanding, sharpening. Sometimes the door that shuts is not rejection, it's redirection. Life saying a not here, but keep going. Brandon didn't change his dream. He changed his delivery, and you might need to do the same. Ask yourself, what if your biggest failure wasn't a dead end, but a detour? What if it's pointing you toward a version of success you didn't even know existed yet? Failure is inevitable, but wasted failure, that's optional, because every failure contains data. It tells you what doesn't work, what you need to change, where your weak points are. But it also tells you where your conviction lives, what you're willing to try again for. Stoicism doesn't ask you to enjoy failure. It asks you to endure it with eyes open, to greet it not with shame, but with curiosity, to say, okay, that didn't work. What's next? The people who go furthest aren't the ones who avoid failure. They're the ones who outlearn it. So if you've been knocked down, good. That means you were trying. That means you're in the arena. Now get back up. Because what stands in your way just might be showing you the way. Lesson 8. Step out of the comfort zone. We all say we want to grow, but few of us are willing to do what growth actually demands. Discomfort, uncertainty, risk. It's ironic, isn't it? We want a stronger mind but avoid anything that might challenge it. We want a meaningful life but cling to what feels safe, even when it feels empty. Let me tell you about Emily. For years, she worked a stable office job in Dallas. Good salary, predictable schedule, health insurance. From the outside, it looked like a success story. But on the inside, Emily felt like she was slowly vanishing. Every day felt like she was living someone else's life. She dreamed of something completely different, teaching yoga, helping people reconnect with their bodies and breath. But every time she considered quitting, her mind whispered, what if you fail? What will people think? You're not ready. Until one day she stopped listening to the fear and started listening to the ache. She packed up her life and moved to Seattle, no job waiting, no clear plan, just a certification, a suitcase, and a vision. The first few months were hard, emotionally, financially, and even physically. She questioned herself. She cried more than once. But 1 year later, Emily told me, I've never felt more alive, more myself. Seneca once said, difficulty strengthens the mind as labor strengthens the body. The Stoics weren't in the business of comfort. They were in the business of courage. And courage isn't born in comfort zones. It's born in friction, in the exact moments when you choose growth over familiarity. If you're feeling restless lately, maybe it's not because you're doing something wrong. Maybe it's because your soul is suffocating inside a life that's too small for you. Growth feels like discomfort because it is discomfort. That doesn't mean something's broken. It means something's trying to bloom. Think about this. If you don't choose your challenges, life will choose them for you. And when it does, it rarely asks for permission. A layoff, a diagnosis, a heartbreak. Life doesn't wait until you're ready. But if you've trained your mind through voluntary difficulty, you'll be far more prepared when involuntary difficulty knocks. The Stoics practice this regularly. Fasting, cold exposure, sleeping on hard surfaces, not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they understood that luxury softens the spirit And a soft spirit crumbles when real adversity strikes. You don't have to move across the country to step outside your comfort zone. You can start smaller. Speak up when you usually stay silent. Try something new when you're afraid of looking silly. Say no when you always say yes. It's not about reckless leaps. It's about deliberate steps into unfamiliar territory. Ask yourself, when was the last time you did something that genuinely scared you a little? When was the last time you said, I have no idea how this will turn out, but I'm going to try anyway? Comfort zones are like warm baths. They feel good at first, but stay in too long and they drain the life out of you. You stop evolving. You start merely existing. Emily's story isn't special because it's dramatic. It's special because it's honest. Honest about how hard it is to walk away from security. Honest about how lonely it can be to follow a new path. But also honest about the day that waits on the other side of fear. I've learned this firsthand. Fear doesn't disappear the moment you act. But action shrinks fear into something you can carry instead of something that carries you. The greatest regret most people have isn't the risk they took. It's the safety they chose instead. They stayed in the relationship, the city, the version of themselves that felt fine. But fine is the enemy of fulfilled. You weren't born to settle for fine, so today I invite you to stretch. Just a little. Lean into something uncomfortable, not because you have to, but because your future depends on it. The comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. And in the words of Seneca, difficulty strengthens the mind as labor strengthens the body. Let life challenge you. Or better yet, challenge yourself first. Lesson 9, every day is a prophecy. Take a moment and look at how you spent today. Not the big goals you wrote in your journal, not the dreams pinned to your vision board, but the actual actions, what you did between waking up and going to sleep. Now ask yourself this, if I repeated today every day for the next 5 years, where would I end up? That's a confronting question. But it's also one of the most important. There's a student named Cole. Like many young people, he used to say he wanted to do something meaningful. But when he finally tracked his daily habits, he found something surprising. Nearly 90% of his free time was spent scrolling TikTok. Not creating, not learning, just consuming. It wasn't a bad day here or there. It was a pattern, a system. And when he zoomed out, he realized, if this continues, 5 years from now, I'll be the same person, just more distracted. So Cole made a decision. He didn't wait for motivation. He didn't delete all his social apps overnight. He simply changed the first 10 minutes of his morning. Every day, before touching his phone, he read. Just 10 minutes. Books on psychology, philosophy, storytelling. Fast forward 1 year, Cole now runs a YouTube channel that shares book insights with over 100,000 subscribers. Same amount of hours in the day, but an entirely different life trajectory. Seneca said it plainly, it's not that we have little time, but that we waste a lot of it. We act like time is some mysterious force that sneaks away from us. But the truth is, time doesn't vanish. It's spent. Every moment is a choice, whether conscious or unconscious, and those choices add up. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They didn't see the day as something to get through. They saw it as a prophecy, a mirror, a declaration of who you're becoming. Look at your calendar, your morning routine, your habits when no one is watching. That's not just how your week went. That's your future in preview mode. And here's the thing, your day doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be aligned with what you claim matters to you. You don't need to read for 2 hours or launch a business overnight. You just need to plant the kind of seed that grows the tree you actually want to sit under. If you want clarity, stop asking what's my purpose and start asking how did I spend today? Because how you spend your day is your purpose. You're living it, whether intentionally or by default. This isn't about guilt, it's about awareness. It's about realizing that your future isn't some distant event. It's shaped in tiny, invisible moments. Brushing your teeth while listening to an audio book instead of mindless news. Spending your lunch break walking instead of doom scrolling. Saying no to one thing so you can say yes to something better. You don't need more hours. You need better use of the hours you already have. Think about this. If someone filmed your day and showed it to you, would it match the life you say you want? Would it reflect your values, your dreams, your potential? Or would it feel like a stranger's life, a version of you just waiting for the right time to begin? Every day you repeat a behavior, you're casting a vote for the person you will become. So even if your action is small, it matters. 10 push-ups, 1 paragraph, 1 deep breath before reacting. These things compound, quietly, powerfully, irreversibly. Cole didn't start with ambition. He started with awareness, and that awareness became action. That action became a habit, and that habit changed everything. You don't need to predict your future. You're already writing it. It looks exactly like your Monday morning, your Thursday night, your Saturday afternoon. So if today felt chaotic, dull, or misaligned, don't beat yourself up. Just ask, what's one thing I can change tomorrow that better reflects the life I want to live? Because every day you wake up, it's not just another day. It's a prophecy, and the pen is in your hands. Lesson 10. Celebrate the small wins. Most people don't quit because they lack ambition. They quit because they don't feel like they're getting anywhere. They look at their goals, their dreams, their progress, and it all feels like a drop in an endless ocean. No applause, no results, just effort and silence. But what if the problem isn't the size of the goal or even your consistency? What if the problem is that you've forgotten to acknowledge the fact that you're still showing up? Olivia hadn't missed a day of her healthy habits in over 2 months. She drank her water, journaled, avoided late-night snacks. But one evening she found herself staring blankly at her fridge, reaching for something she didn't need. She wasn't even hungry, just tired. But then her phone buzzed. It was a simple notification from a self-reflection app she'd set up. What made you proud of yourself today? She paused, thought about her day, the fact that she made time for a walk, that she listened to her friend without interrupting, that she chose tea instead of coffee at 9 p.m. None of those things would make headlines, but in that moment, they felt real, worth something. That tiny moment of acknowledgement shifted her energy. She smiled, shut the fridge, and walked away. That's the power of micro-celebrations. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing. It's not always graceful. Life doesn't flow in perfect rhythm. Sometimes it's gritty, awkward, and exhausting. And in that kind of life, you need fuel, something to keep you going when no one's cheering. Celebration isn't about throwing a party or posting your achievements online. It's about giving your brain evidence that effort matters. That progress, no matter how small, is still worth noticing. Most of us only celebrate the finish line, the big wins, the moment the book is published, the day the weight is lost, the promotion. But the Stoics knew something we often forget. The finish line doesn't exist without the footsteps. If you don't learn to honor the footsteps, you'll burn out before you get anywhere meaningful. Ask yourself, when was the last time you paused, not for social media, not for validation, but just to say, I'm proud of how I handled that? Maybe you didn't snap back in anger. Maybe you finally asked for help. Maybe you woke up and faced a day when it would have been easier to pull the covers back over your head. That counts. In a world obsessed with metrics and milestones, celebrating small internal victories is an act of rebellion. It says, I don't need to be finished to be proud. I just need to be moving. One powerful practice is to build a daily ritual of reflection. Just a minute before bed to ask, what did I do well today? What did I resist that I normally give into? Where did I show growth, even if no one saw it? Those moments don't just track progress, they build identity. Because every time you celebrate a tiny win, you reinforce the kind of person you're becoming. Olivia's app didn't make her better overnight, but it helped her stay connected to something deeper than motivation. It helped her remember, I'm not doing this for applause. I'm doing this because I said I would, and I'm proud of that. The world may not clap for your quiet victories, but you can and you must, because life is hard enough. Goals are long enough. If you wait until the end to feel proud, you'll miss 1,000 chances to nourish your soul. No one runs a marathon without water stations, and no one builds a life of integrity without stopping now and then to say, you're doing better than you think. So today, carve out one small moment, light a metaphorical candle, smile at the fact that you tried, because every time you do, you're giving your future self the strength to keep going one small celebration at a time. Lesson 11. Break the excuse with one small action. We've all heard that voice, the one that whispers, you're not good at this. You're too old. That's just not who you are. It sounds like logic, like honesty, like humility even. But more often than not, it's just fear dressed up in reasonable clothing. Nate was one of those people who always said, I'm just not a good speaker. Every time the idea of public speaking came up, at work, at community events, he'd shrink away. His hands would sweat just thinking about it. But deep down, he knew the real reason he kept avoiding it wasn't lack of skill. It was the story he kept telling himself. The same story on loop. I'm not built for this. Until one day he decided to run an experiment. Instead of trying to become a great speaker, Nate just recorded a 1-minute video of himself talking about a topic he liked. Every week. No audience, no pressure, just him, his phone, and a quiet corner. Week 1, he cringed. Week 3, he got through it without deleting the clip. Week 7, he actually laughed at himself. And by week 12, he stood in front of a small group at work and delivered a short presentation without trembling once. No miracle, no viral breakthrough. Just one small action repeated until the excuse had no ground to stand on. That's the lesson. The stories we tell ourselves are often built on air, and the smallest action is often enough to make the lie collapse. Epictetus said, he who masters his words masters his destiny. But before you master your words in public, you must challenge the private words you whisper to yourself. How many things have you postponed because of a sentence like, I'm not that kind of person. I'm not good with money. I can't wake up early. I've never been disciplined. Who gave you that label? And when was the last time you tried to rewrite it? Not with a speech, but with a single action. You don't have to prove everyone wrong. You just have to prove yourself wrong once. A little proof is all it takes to fracture a massive excuse. One small habit, one uncomfortable step. That's the wedge that breaks the wall. Think about it. A drop of water doesn't look like much, but give it enough time, and it will carve through stone. Action works the same way, quiet, patient, and undeniable. Boom. And here's the secret. You don't need to be motivated to start. You just need to act despite the voice. The Stoics weren't interested in your feelings. They were interested in what you do. They knew that you don't think your way into change. You act your way into it. If Nate had waited to feel ready, he would still be silent. If he had waited for confidence to arrive, he'd still be hiding behind, "I'm just not a speaker." But by doing one small thing differently, consistently, he transformed that sentence into a stepping stone instead of a wall. So here's the question. What's one story you keep telling yourself that needs to be challenged? What's one small action that can interrupt that narrative today? You don't have to shout it. You don't have to post about it. But you do have to do it. Because excuses grow stronger the longer they go unchallenged. But even the strongest lie starts to shake when truth shows up with work boots on. And truth doesn't need a stage. It doesn't need applause. It just needs proof, one quiet step at a time. So if you've been stuck behind an old belief, here's your reminder. You are not the story you told yourself yesterday. You're the action you take today. Lesson 12. Wake up from paralysis. Sometimes the hardest part of life isn't what you have to do. It's getting yourself to move at all, to get out of bed, to put one foot on the floor, to stop lying there staring at the ceiling, waiting for some invisible force to rescue you. Vanessa knew that feeling all too well. She wasn't in a dramatic crisis, no loud panic attacks, no rock-bottom meltdown. Just a quiet, persistent fog. Every morning the same weight sat on her chest. It wasn't that she didn't want to live fully, she just didn't feel capable of beginning. And then one day she changed her goal. She didn't try to fix her life or be positive or find motivation. She told herself one thing, just stand up. That's it. Not shower, not exercise, not clean the kitchen. Just get out of bed and stand. That tiny shift changed everything. Because when she stood, her body remembered it was still alive. Her breath deepened. Her mind cleared, even if just a little. And from that small action, other actions followed, without force, without guilt. The next day, she stood again and walked to the window. The day after that, she made coffee. A week later, she was back at her part-time job. Not because she planned it, but because she acted her way out of paralysis. Here's the truth most productivity gurus don't tell you. You don't need the perfect routine. You don't need a bulletproof mindset. You just need movement. Because movement is the antidote to mental quicksand. The Stoics didn't wait for clarity to act. They believed clarity comes through action. They understood that forward motion, even the smallest kind, breaks the spell of helplessness. Too many people think they're stuck because they're lazy or broken. But in reality, they're overwhelmed, paralyzed by the idea that they must do everything, so they do nothing. But you don't have to do everything, you just have to do something. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't waste what's left of your life wondering how to live it. Just live." That's the difference between thinking and doing. Thinking waits, doing begins, even if that doing is as small as putting both feet on the floor before sunrise. Here's what most people forget. You don't have to feel ready to start. You don't even have to feel good. You just have to move. Even if your heart isn't in it yet, your body can lead the way because the mind follows motion. Maybe for you, that stand-up moment is sending one email or opening a notebook or walking outside for 3 minutes. Whatever it is, let it be small. Let it be almost laughably easy because the goal is not to transform your life today. The goal is to disrupt the silence, to interrupt the freeze, to tell your nervous system we're not stuck anymore. And once that message gets through, a little power returns, then a little more, until one day you look back and realize it wasn't one massive breakthrough, it was a quiet collection of tiny choices that brought you here. So if you're lying in bed, stuck between your thoughts and your fears, this is your permission to let go of the big plan. Just sit up, stand up, walk across the room. You're not lazy. You're not weak. You're just one small action away from waking up your strength again. Start with the step so small it feels ridiculous. Because in that ridiculous step is your return. Not every transformation needs to be loud. Not every moment of growth comes with applause. Sometimes the most powerful changes happen quietly. In the early morning when you choose to rise without motivation, in the late night when you resist old patterns, in the middle of an ordinary day when no one is watching, but you still choose to act with purpose. The Stoics never waited for a perfect moment. They didn't chase recognition. They knew that the reward was in the doing, in the discipline of choosing what's right over and over again, even when it's unseen. You don't need a breakthrough. You don't need a dramatic story. What you need when is a rhythm of right choices, a rhythm of rising when it's easier to sink, of doing the thing when your mind gives you 1,000 reasons not to. And that rhythm, built from tiny acts of courage, becomes your character. Seneca once said, "While you hesitate, life passes." That's not just a warning. It's a gift, a reminder that every second you don't hesitate, you are rewriting your story. Every second you act instead of excuse. Every second you live on purpose rather than autopilot. You are becoming someone powerful, grounded, and deeply alive. No one has to see it. No one has to clap for it because your growth is not a performance. It's a promise to yourself. So if you're waiting for a sign to begin, let this be it. Not tomorrow, not next Monday, right now, because it's in the seconds you claim today that the next version of you is born. And if this video spoke to you, if it reminded you of your own strength or helped you see your next step more clearly, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to this channel. Your support helps us keep making content that speaks to the soul. And more importantly, drop a comment below. Let us know which Stoic lesson hit home for you. Or what small action will you take today to honor your future self? We're listening, and we're walking this path with you, one intentional step at a time.